Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome, my dear students of Serial 1 for a new biology session. Today, inshallah, we are talking about kingdom fungi. Kingdom fungi. After we have studied two kingdoms, we have studied before kingdom Monera, which include the bacteria, the archaeobacteria and the eubacteria. The archaeobacteria, as you know, the bacteria which they are considered prokaryotes. They don't have a real nucleus. And the archaeobacteria can live in hot springs and very harsh environments, such as hot spring with no oxygen and high salty water. This is archaeobacteria. And eubacteria, which found everywhere in the air, in the water, in the food, and inside our bodies. Eubacteria different from the archaeobacteria because they live everywhere. And there is some differences between the cell wall and the plasma membrane. Eubacteria have many shapes, like root shape or spherical shape or spiral shape. The example of eubacteria, nostoc. And after that, we have studied kingdom Protista, which include 4 phyla, phylum Protozoa, which include 4 classes, class Sarcodina, class Celiophora, class Flagellata, and class Porozoa. And phylum number 2, phylum Euglenophyta, which include Euglena. Phylum number 3, phylum Chrysophyta, which include diatoms. Phylum number 4, Perophyta, or the red algae. These dinoflagellata, they have 2 flagella, they move by 2 flagella. And this is now we are start talking about kingdom fungi. Kingdom fungi. They are different from the kingdom Monera and kingdom Protista because most fungi are multicellular organisms. And some of them only are unicellular organisms. So they are higher in structure. Their body is more complicated, more than Monera and Protista. Most of them are multicellular. So in kingdom Protista and kingdom Monera, we have studied only unicellular organisms. Here in fungi, we can see some multicellular organisms. And they are immobile. They don't move. Immobile means they cannot move. They are stable or static. And the wall contain lignin. The cell wall contain lignin. And they are considered, they consist of filaments called hyphae, And they are collected together to form mycelium. Like what hyphae and mycelium? Like if you want to draw the bread mold fungus, if you want to draw now here the bread mold fungus, we can draw it here like this. If we have a piece of bread and the bread mold start forming on it, we can see here a piece of bread. There is some spores fall down on the bread. Some spores fall down on the bread. These spores make what? Make mycelium. Make hyphae, then make a mycelium. The hyphae is the thread like this, and it has some rhizoids, like roots of the plants, some rhizoids like this, and the horizontal thread is called the hypha, and it has a holder which you carry the holder, this spore holder, which carries a spore sac. In the top of the spore holder, there is a spore sac. And inside the spore sac, there are many spores. There are many spores, hundreds or thousands of spores inside the spore sac. Okay. This is the shape of rhizobus, or the bread mold fungus. We have here the way of reproduction is by spores. Okay. But I need to know that there is a spore holder, a spore holder here, and a spore sac here, include many spores, and there is here roots, some not roots, not real roots, but they are rhizoids, similar to roots. And this is the hypha. This is the horizontal extension. This is which is called the hypha. Okay, and all of this is called the mycelium. All of this is called the mycelium. When the spores grow up and become enough to reproduce, the sporangium or the spore sac is open. The spore sac opens, and the spore sac opens, and the spore fly in the air. The spore sac, this is spore sac open and explode, and the spores fly in the air, searching for a new place to reproduce again. The spores fly in the air, searching for a new place, to search for a new place to make a new fungus, to make a new fungus. So this spore sac explode finally, and the spores spread in the air, searching for a new place to make a new mycelium, to make a new fungus. This is a way of growing and reproduction of the bread mold fungus. So they are, their way of reproduction is asexually here by spores. They are heterotrophic. The meaning of heterotrophic, they are heterotrophic. They cannot make their food. They don't contain plastids. So they live maybe parasites or saprophytes. They may be parasitic or maybe saprophytic. They can decay the dead bodies, so they will be saprophytic, and they can cause diseases for other living organisms, and they are considered parasites. Most of the fungi reproduce sexually, as well as they reproduce asexually by spores. They reproduce asexually by spores, and this is the shape of spores as you see here. So the way of reproduction sexually, and they can also reproduce asexually by spores. After that, we have some examples, or we can divide the kingdom fungi into many divisions. Divisions of kingdom fungi. We have here three divisions. You cannot say they are phylum. You can say they are phylum, but they are divisions. We call them divisions. The division number one is called zygomycota. Zygomycota. Zygomycota, example of zygomycota, the bread mold fungus, or Rhizobus nigricans. Rhizobus nigricans. Rhizobus nigricans. This is the bread mold fungus. The hypha are not divided. In this fungus, the hypha, this hypha is not divided. The horizontal, this horizontal hypha, this is the hypha, is not divided. This is the hypha, is not divided. And there is many rhizoids here. Many rhizoids here. Rhizoids similar to roots in the plants. Rhizoids are similar to roots in the plants. They fixes the fungus in the bread and grow and absorbing the food, absorbing the nutrients from the food for the fungus from the bread. They reduce by spores inside the sporangia. This is the sporangium. This here, the sporangium, as you see, the sporangium is filled with spores. The way of reproduction is spores. Example is bread mold or Rhizobus nigricans, which cause the black vitrification on the bread, and you cannot eat the bread after vitrification. After formation of this bread mold, it becomes poisonous. You cannot eat it, of course. It causes the decaying of the bread. But the Rhizobus or the bread mold is useful sometimes in some medicines. They can extract a medicine which is called cortisone from the rhizobus. And also an enzyme used in making cheese is extracted from bread mold fungus. So it is useful in many purposes. But if it is formed on the bread, you cannot eat the bread, it become a decayed. Okay, after that, after division zygomycota, we have another division which is called ascomycota, red ascomycota, red division ascomycota. Example of ascomycota, the yeast fungus, which is unicellular organism, unicellular fungus. Yeast fungus, you have studied in grade 9, it reproduced by budding, reproduced by budding. If you remember, it can make a colony, it reproduces. If reproduction is asexual reproduction by budding, the yeast fungus is unicellular, and it is from division ascomycota. From division ascomycota. And we have also here the penicillium fungus, the penicillium fungus which grow up on the rotten orange. It make orange rotten, the green color on orange when it become decayed and rotten. The penicillium fungus is multicellular fungus, multicellular. The hyphae is divided and there is many branches. It has many cells. So the penicillium is a multicellular, but the yeast fungus is unicellular. The yeast fungus is unicellular. And the hypha is divided by septa. The hypha is divided by septa. If you want to know the meaning of septa, the hypha extend like this, like this, like this, like this, and make many rhizoids like this, but it is divided by septa. There is many divisions here, many divisions here, many divisions like this, like this. This is also here. We have the penicillium fungus is like this, and the fungus is divided. It is divided into many cells. This is many divisions like this. Septa. The septa is the way of separation between cells. Like this, like this. The hypha is divided into many by many septa, like this, and this, and so on. This is the shape of the penicillium, which is different from the bread mold. Different from the bread mold, which is not divided. The hypha is not divided in the bread mold, but in penicillium, the hypha is divided. They reproduce by spores. The way of reproduction is by spores. And it has sac-like structure called asci. So they are called ascomycota. The sac-like structure which have spores is called asci. And so the name comes from ascomycota. It is like a sac filled with the spores. It is like a sac filled with the spores. Example is penicillium fungus, which is a very important fungus because we can extract antibiotic from it. The penicillin antibiotic, the most important antibiotic, penicillin, extracted from penicillium fungus. So it has a very important medical use. Penicillium fungus is very important in medicine. Penicillium fungus, which comes from division ascomycota. The last division, which is called basidiomycota. 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 The example here is mushroom fungus. Mushroom fungus. Mushroom fungus is multicellular fungus. The hypha is divided also by septa. The hypha is divided by septa, and it has spores inside a cup-shaped structure. This is a cup like a hat. This cup has many spores here inside here. Has many spores here. There is many big number of spores here inside the cup from the bottom. And the way of reproduction, of course, by spores. They can fly in the air, forming new fungus. And this structure is called basidium. This cup is called basidium. So the name comes basidiomycota. The name comes basidiomycota because the structure which contain the spores is called basidium. Example of basidiomycota, a mushroom fungus, which is a kind, some kinds of mushroom are eaten, is a food, good food for the human because it contains large amount of proteins. But not all mushroom can be eaten. Some mushroom are poisonous. You cannot eat any type of mushroom because some of the types of mushroom contain poisons. So only some types of mushroom can be eaten. This is the shape of mushroom. It has a stalk like a stem of the plant. It has some mycelium, the filaments or the horizontal threads, and also they have also here some rhizoids, many rhizoids fixing the mushroom in the ground. And of course, it is a saprophytic. It is a saprophytic organism. It lives as a saprophytic, decomposer or saprophytic. Now we finish the kingdom fungi, and we can go to study kingdom planta or kingdom plantae. The fourth kingdom we have kingdom plantae. Of course, we know the plants around us everywhere. If we want to study plants in classification, we have to know that in the beginning, the plants, of course, are more developed than fungi because they are autotrophic organisms and they have a real nucleus. They are eukaryotic organisms. They have a real nucleus. And they have cellulose in the cell wall. Cellulose, not lignin like fungi. Cellulose in the cell wall. And the plant cell contain chlorophyll substance which can absorb the sunlight and make photosynthesis process, and found inside an organelle chloroplastids or chloroplasts. So the plant is any plant can make food by photosynthesis process due to the presence of chlorophyll substance inside the green plastids. Most plants reproduce sexually. Flowering, especially flowering plants, they reproduce sexually. And we can divide plants into three subkingdoms: higher algae, non-vascular plants, and vascular plants. The higher algae comes here from kingdom plantae. They include the red algae, the brown algae, and the green algae according to the dye or the pigment inside the plastids. The red algae contain the red pigment, the brown algae contain the red brown pigment, and the green algae contain the chlorophyll, the green pigment. And non-vascular plants like mosses or bryophytes, and vascular plants like monocotyledon and dicotyledon, angiosperm, and geminosperm. We'll study them in details. Let's start with phylum number 1 in higher algae. We start with higher algae. It contains phylum Rhodophyta. Rhodophyta or the red algae. The red algae are called rhodophyta. They are marine weeds. They found in the sea and the ocean, sticking together by gelatinous coat. You have a gelatinous coat like this picture here. And they don't have roots. They don't have real roots. No roots here. No roots. So they are floating in the sea and ocean water. The cells of these algae contain chromatophores called red pigments. Example is Polysyphonia. Example is Polysyphonia. The example of red algae, Polysyphonia. Remember the name. Polysyphonia is an example of red algae. Phylum number 2, phylum Phaeophyta. Phylum Phaeophyta. Also, they are marine weeds. They are marine weeds also. They found in the sea and ocean. Consist of filaments or branches, many branches, like this picture. As you see here, we have the fucus, example of Phaeophyta or the brown algae. Phaeophyta or the brown algae. They are marine weeds, consist of simple branched filaments. Branched filaments. And chromatophores brown with brown pigment in their cells, and the example is fucus. The example of Phaeophyta is fucus. Remember the name. The example of Phaeophyta or the brown algae, fucus. The difference between Rhodophyta and Phaeophyta, the color of the pigment. In the Rhodophyta, we have red pigment, and in the Phaeophyta, we have brown pigment. Phylum number 3, Chlorophyta. Chlorophyta or the green algae. Chlorophyta or the green algae. They contain chloroplastids, which contain contain the green pigment, chlorophyll. Some of them are unicellular, such as Chlamydomonas, and some of them are multicellular, such as Pyrogyra. We have two examples. We have Chlamydomonas. The Chlamydomonas algae is unicellular. The Chlamydomonas algae is unicellular. And the Spirogyra is multicellular. The shape of the chloroplast is very important. Here, the shape of the chloroplast is cup-shaped chloroplast. Big one, and the cup-shaped shape is like a cup of coffee. This cup-shaped chloroplast. Can you see? The cup-shaped chloroplast, like this, like this, like this. This is a chloroplast. And it has two flagella, and they can move by the flagella. So they are a link between plants and animals. They can move like animals, and they have a chloroplast like plants. This is a Chlamydomonas algae, example of unicellular chlorophyta or unicellular green algae. Example of multicellular is Spirogyra. Spirogyra is a green algae but contain many cells in one thread, and it has as specialized with a spiral shaped chloroplast. The chloroplast is very long and spiral shaped like this. Spiral shaped chloroplast like this. The shape of the chloroplast is very important. The difference between the cup-shaped chloroplast and the spiral-shaped chloroplast in Spirogyra. And it is a long thread divided into many septa, by septum into cells like this, many cells. So it is multicellular algae. The Spirogyra is multicellular algae. Okay. Now we can move to the fourth phylum, phylum Bryophyta or Moses. Bryophyta or Moses in kingdom Plantae. We have here Moses like plants. Now you can see a plant. It is a grown plant, not algae. It's more developed than algae. The algae don't have roots or stem or leaves. But also they always live in water. Here in Moses, we can see some of them live on the land. Moses Mosses can live on the land. So we have here mosses different from algae because they can live on the land, but algae are always live in water, in the sea and oceans. This phylum include the plants which don't contain specialized vascular tissue. The mosses don't contain xylem and phloem, the tissues which are called the specialized vascular tissue, which help in transferring water and mineral salts and food in the plant. They don't contain this specialized tissue. So they are called non-vascular plants. They are called non-vascular plants. They don't have xylem and phloem. And they are terrestrial plants. They can live on the land. Terrestrial means they live on the land, not in the water, but they always live in wet area, in places there is shade and water. But they need water to grow. They live in damp soil and in shaded places. They are small green in color, and they have a certain hairs for anchorage, for fixing them in the ground. Anchorage here for fixing, like roots of the plants, which are called rhizoids. They are not real roots, but they are called rhizoids. Some of them are flat, like rhizoia. Rhizoia is a flat moss, flat rhizoia, and the other one is erect, like funaria. Here funaria is erect. It has something like a stem, and something like a leaf, something like a stem and something like a leaf here, something like a leaf and something like a stem. So it is called the erect mosses. But the rhizoia is flat on the ground. It is a flat block of green leaves, a block of green colored leaves, no stem at all, no stem at all, like this, the erect mosses, funaria, but the flat mosses, which is rhizoia. Phylum Tracheophyta. After that, we go to phylum number 5, phylum Tracheophyta, or vascular plants. You can say they are vascular plants. They have vascular tissue, xylem and phloem. They have vascular tissue, which is xylem and phloem, which help in transporting water and mineral salts. This is through the xylem, and transporting organic substances produced by photosynthesis, which is the phloem. So they are called the vascular plants. They are called the vascular plants because they have xylem and phloem. This phylum is classified into 3 classes. 3 classes in phylum Tracheophyta. Class number 1, class Felicati or ferns. Felicati or ferns, example here, we have the fern plant. Or its name is called polypodium. Polypodium. The polypodium. Okay. The ferns or Felicati is example of plants with tissue, transport tissue, which is xylem and phloem, and they are shrubs. They are small trees. Some of them also are herbs, very small plants, and they live in shaded damp regions, as well as the walls of the shaded damp valleys. They live in damp area, wet area. They need more water. They have stem, leaves, and roots, and also they carry pinnate leaves. The leaves are pinnate and do not produce flowers. They reproduce by spores, like the fungi reproduce by spores, and found in special structure in the lower surface of the leaves. Example here, polypodium and adiantum. Polypodium and adiantum. Polypodium and adiantum, the example of ferns or Felicati. Class number 2, class gymnosperm or gymnospermi or conifers. Gymnosperms are plants with roots, stem, and leaves and make big trees. They are big trees. Sometimes they are huge trees like pine plants or pinus. The pinus plant or the pine plant. That is sonnober. And most of them are trees, few are shrubs. They don't produce flowers. They don't have flowers, and seeds are found outside pericarp, or there is no fruit to make the seeds. The seeds are formed in a coon. There is no fruit like the flowering plants. The seeds are formed in a fruit. In the fruit, like mango or guava, you can see the fruit and you can see the seeds inside the fruit. But here in conifers, the seeds are formed in a coon without a fruit at all. There is no fruit at all. They have a naked seeds and the needle-shaped leaves. The needle leaves like needles, long leaves like needles. The example of gymnosperm, pinus plant. Finally, class angiosperms or angiospermi, or the flowering plants. The flowering plants, they are the most developed plants at all. And they are terrestrial plants. They found on the ground, they found on the land, they grow on the land. They have stem, leaves, and roots, and produce flowers that convert into fruit. Like as you see the peach here, the fruit has a seed inside it. The seed is formed inside the fruit, and there is a fruit envelope, pericarp. The fruit enclosing seeds, and classify these angiosperms classified into two groups, monocotyledon and dicotyledons. Monocotyledon and dicotyledon. The differences between monocotyledon and dicotyledon here. Here of monocotyledon, the example of monocotyledon, the maize or the corn plant. The example of dicotyledon, the beans or fasolas or lentils or cotton plant. Okay, here the seeds the seed has one division only, one part only, but the seed here it has two cotyledons, two parts. You can divide the seeds easily into two parts. And the leaves, bundle of vascular tissue is a parallel here tissue in the leaves. But the leaves here are pinnate. The leaves, the bundle of vascular tissue, are scattered inside them. You can see the vascular tissue scattered in the stem here. The xylem and tissue are scattered. If you make a slice or you make a transverse section of the stem, you can see the vascular tissue, xylem, and the phloem is scattered. But here it is organized in a circle. They are organized in one circle here, the xylem and the phloem, in the dicotyledon. And the flower here have trimerous walls. In monocotyledon, there are 3 or 6 or 9, 3 and its multiplication. So it is called trimerous walls. But in the dicotyledon, there are tetramerous or pentamerous walls. They are 4 or 5 and their multiplication. The leaves, the flowers are 4 or 5 and its multiplication. The leaves are narrow and parallel vennate. The leaves are narrow and parallel vennate, but the leaves here are vennate and palmate vennation. Palmate vennation, they mean like the hand, like your hand, like fingers of your hand, like this, the pennation, the veins inside the leaf like this. But here the veins are parallel. They are parallel venated. They are parallel venated here. But here they are pinnate and palmate venated. Finally, the root of monocotyledon is fibrous root. The root here is fibrous. It has many hairs or fibers like this, like this, like this. And it doesn't extend for long distance in the soil. But the root here extend for long distance in the soil, and it is a tape root. The root is a tape root, long tape root. The root is long and the tape root, and it extends for long distance in the soil in the dicotyledon. So there is many differences between monocotyledon and the dicotyledon. Example of monocotyledon, we have the wheat, the onion, the maize or the corn, the palm. And examples of dicotyledon, peas and beans and cotton. All of these are, and the roses also are dicotyledon. Here we come to the end of kingdom plantae. I know it is a lot to study. You need to revise it and read it many times. You need to read it again many times to remember kingdom plantae. You can summarize it. It has the kingdom plantae divided into 4 phyla. Phylum number 1, Rhodophyta or the red algae like Polysiphonia. Phylum number 2, Phaeophyta or the brown algae like Fucus. Phylum number 3, Chlorophyta like Chlamydomonas, which is a unicellular, and Spirogyra, which is the multicellular. Phylum number 4, Bryophyta or Moses, like Riccia and Fionaria. Phylum number 5, Brachyophyta or vascular plants. We have many classes here, class Felicati, like ferns, like Polypodium and Adiantum. Class number 2, Geminosperm or conifers, like Pinus. And the class Angiosperm, which have monocotyledon and dicotyledon. Monocotyledon, such as wheat, onion, and palm. Dicotyledon, such as pea, beans, and cotton. We can stop here, come to the end. Thank you. Next session, inshallah, we'll discuss kingdom Animalia. Thank you and goodbye. Do you have any question?
No.
You need to read it again. You need to read it again carefully. And if you want to summarize, you can.